Okay, you could begin.
Okay. Hello, good day, everybody. My name is Murray Constantine, and I will be presenting the first two parts of this chapter, which is transformational and charismatic leadership and power and influence and leadership. Transformational and charismatic leadership. In this section, we'll be talking about transformational and charismatic leadership and other styles of leadership. But one key characteristic of both charismatic and transformational leadership is that they are based largely on the strength of a leader's personal power rather than a position of authority granted by an organization. Transformational versus transactional leadership. Transformational leadership typically has a substantial impact on followers and can potentially renew an entire organization. Transactional leadership is a transaction between leaders and followers. Transactional leader recognizes followers' needs and desires and then clarifies how those needs and desires will be satisfied in exchange for meeting specific objectives or performing certain duties. Transactional leaders focus on the present and excel at keeping the organization running smoothly and efficiently. However, this involves a commitment to follow the rules to maintain stability within the organization rather than promote change. Transformational leadership is characterized by the ability to bring about significant change in both followers and organizations. Leadership has the ability to lead changes in an organization's vision, strategy, and culture, as well as promote innovation in products and technologies. Transformational leadership is based on personal values, beliefs, and qualities of the leader rather than on exchange process between leaders and followers. Transformational leadership skills can be learned and not ingrained personality characteristics. However, personality traits may make it easier for a leader to display transformational uh, transformational leadership behaviors. Any questions so far about transformational leadership and transactional leadership? None? Okay. Transformational leadership differs from transactional leadership. Transformational leadership develops followers into leaders. Transformational leadership evaluates the concerns of followers from low-level physical needs to high-level psychological needs. Transformational leadership inspires followers to go beyond their own self-interest for the group. Transformational leadership paints a vision of a desired future state and communicates it in a way that makes the pain of change with the effort. Effective, effective exhibit both effective leaders exhibit both transactional and transformational leaders patterns. Charismatic leadership. Charismatic leadership creates both awe and submission in followers where they seek to increase the engagement among them. Charismatic leaders have the ability to inspire and motivate others to do more than what they are familiar with, despite obstacles and personal sacrifice. That's why charisma has been called a fire that ignites followers. For this reason, they have an emotional impact on people because they appeal in both heart and mind, being willing to incur great personal risk. What makes a charismatic leader? Charismatic leadership qualities and behaviors can help anyone become a stronger leader. These unique qualities of charismatic leaders can have a great impact on their followers. Shared perspective and idealized vision with subordinates or among co-workers, passionate advocacy by taking on great personal risks towards themselves that may harm work relations, create atmosphere of change within an organization to promote performance, idealized vision that strays away from the status quo, uses non-conventional and counter-normative means to transcend the existing order, transcends their position from traditional power to focus on personal power from expertise to gain respect and admiration for the leader. Black hat of charisma can be a curse as well as a blessing, basically a double-sided coin. Charisma can be used for self-serving purposes, which leads to deception, manipulation, and exploitation of others, since it is emotional rather than logical or rational, which is risky and potentially dangerous. Distinctions distinctions between positive charisma and negative charisma outcomes from personalized leaders and socialized leaders. Personalized charismatic leaders are characterized as self-aggrandizing or non-egalitarian and exploitative, whereas socialized charismatic leaders are empowering, egalitarian, and supportive. This part of the section will be talking about power and influence and leadership. Power is the ability of one person or department in an organization to influence other people to bring about desire. It is an intangible force in organizations, one that cannot be seen, but its effects can be felt. Power is the capacity to cause change in a person. Influence may be thought as the degree of actual change. Influence is the effect of a person's actions have on the attitudes, values, beliefs, or actions of others. Power and influence are used synonymously, but there are distinctions between the two. Usually thinking of power and influence as belonging to the leader, in reality, they are result from the interaction of the leaders and followers in specific situations. 5 types of leader power. Legitimate power is the authority granted from a formal position in an organization. This demonstrates position power. This means that if an organization grant power onto a person like a promotion to be a management or supervisor, subordinates must comply with with the change of management or pos- um, or, or thing of power to comply and take orders. Reward power. Reward power is the authority to bestow rewards on other people. This demonstrates positional power as subordinates are inclined to as no as leaders Leaders who have positional power are inclined to bestow rewards such as cash bonuses or pay raise onto subordinates. Coercive power is the opposite of reward power, where to punish or recommend punishment. This demonstrates position power because same time say opposite of reward power is to demonstrate punishment. Like if you didn't do a good job, you might get scolded. You didn't do the correct thing in order or not being hardworking, you might eventually get a pay deduction or a relief from work. Expert power results from a leader's special knowledge or skill regarding tasks performed by followers. Personal power. Now, this is personal power. This is not like how positional power does operate. It shows that followers can have a level of expert power since they are on the field. They know how everything works from their level in the organization compared to experts like CEOs, managers who only scratch the surface of knowing what is going on at the bottom of the organization. Reverent power comes from leader personality characteristics that command followers' identification, respect, and admiration, so they want to emulate the leader. This is personal power, and this shares a lot of similarities with charismatic leadership, how it commands a presence, it encourages workers to work more harder, to be a part of some and to be admired, to be a part of something and so on. Response to power. There are three distinct outcomes that may appear from the use of power: compliance, resistance, and commitment. Compliance means when subordinates follow the directions of the person with power, even when they agree or not with those directions, they will obey orders and carry out instructions whether they have opinions about it. It is positional power, and when used appropriately, it could be healthy. Resistance. Resistance can arise, especially the use of coercion. Ex- Coercion exceeds a level people consider legitimate, means employees will purposely avoid carrying out instructions. They will attempt to disobey orders. This is also positional power, but when from a leader that uses excessive use, it could form resistance. Commitment. Commitment means that followers adopt the leader's viewpoints and enthusiastically carry out instructions that are often generated by personal power. This can promote change when a leader is promoting change as it carries a lot of risk, but commitment helps overcome fear and resistance with change efforts. This is personal power. And next slide, please. Role of dependency. A person who has control over something that others want and need, like information, resources, or cooperation, he or she gains power. A big aspect of power as a function of dependency is, for example, let's say that the greater individuals B dependency on individuals A, whether it's for information, resources, cooperation, as one relies on index or each other in organizations. Therefore, individual A gains power. Nature of dependency. Relationships between leaders and subordinates in organizations fluctuate depending on economic circumstances. For example, jobs are plentiful and unemployment is low. A person would feel less dependent on their boss, but in a circumstance where unemployment is high and jobs are hard to come by, people are more likely to depend on the organization for their livelihood. Control of resources. Dependency within organizations can have a person's control over resources. Examples of these are jobs, rewards, financial support, expertise, knowledge, materials, information, and time. There are three characteristics about resources being of high importance: scarcity and non-suitability. Resources can be important, for example, they may be essential elements of a key production. They may directly generate sales, or they may be critical to reducing or avoiding uncertainty for top decision makers. Scarcity. Scarcity means whether the resource is easy or difficult to obtain. This makes such resources expensive and more valuable, that creates more dependency than one that is widely available. Non-substitutability means that leaders or employers with control over resources with no valuable substitute will have no power. This may include knowledge and expertise, as well as access to people with high power. Now I'll take you over to Miss Sukun for the next part of this presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I will be doing the topic sources of leader power in organization. Sources of leader power can be examined once there is an understanding of dependency and control over resources. These sources are seen as a basis for a leader's influence. The strategic contingencies theory identifies power sources not linked to the specific person or position, but the role the leader plays in the functioning of the organization. Interdepartmental dependency is when departments in an organization rely on each other to achieve their goals. In an organization, there are departments that receive resources and departments that provide these resources. The department on the receiving end will therefore have less power. Control over information. Information is not limited to just one person. Everyone has access to information. However, some people will almost always have access to more information than others. Control over information is when people have control over how and to whom the information is distributed. This is an example of a source of power to leaders. Controlling what information is collected, how it is interpreted, and how it is shared can influence how decisions are made. In an organization, access to information is determined by a person's position. Leaders at the top may have more information than other employees. Lower level leaders or employees can also see control over information as a source of power. If they have access to exclusive information needed by leaders, this can grant them power in return. Organizational centrality. This refers to a leader's or department's role in the primary activity of an organization. Centrality is measured by the extent to which the work of the leader's department affects the output of the organization. Centrality is associated with more power because it reflects the contribution made to the organization. Coping with uncertainty. When an environment is changing quickly or there is little information presented to leaders, it tends to create uncertainty. When leaders are faced with uncertainty, it all comes down to whether or not they can cope with it. If a leader is able to cope with uncertainty presented to them, then it will increase their power. Strategic issues and uncertainties are continually changing for organizations. This can create shifting power relationships. When departments help organizations cope with uncertainties, their power will increase. Increasing power through political activity. Since power is not enough to be coping with organizational uncertainties or performing central activities, it is therefore increased through political activity. People who are interested in increasing their power will make sure that the activities being done are visible and appreciated by others. Politics is used to acquire power to obtain desired future outcomes when there is uncertainty or disagreement about choices. In an organization, individuals and departments engage in political activity. This can either be a negative or positive force. Uncertainty and conflict are very common in an organization, and this can be handled by using politics to accomplish things that can't be handled through formal policies or position power. Using power and politics to get things done is an important aspect of leadership. Politics is also used by leaders to increase their personal power. Impression management. This is another political approach, which means that people seek to control how others perceive them, creating an impression of greater power as well as helping them gain more power. This includes subtle name dropping, which will give the impression that the leader associates with high status people. Flattery is also a form of impression management, which helps a leader to appear pleasant. Impression management can sometimes backfire on the leader because they might be perceived as insincere, dishonest, or arrogant. Now I'm going to pass you on to Zaria.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I'll be presenting tactics for asserting leader influence. This is how leaders use their power to implement decisions, facilitate change, and pursue organizational goals. That is, leaders use power to influence others, which requires both skill and willingness. Leaders frequently use a combination of influence strategies, and people who use a wider variety of tactics are typically perceived as having greater power and influence. So we have 7 tactics, which are use of rational persuasion, make people like you, rely on the rule of reciprocity, develop allies, ask for what you want, the principle of scarcity, and extend formal authority with expertise and credibility. So first we have rational persuasion, and I actually have a little example here. Hey, I loved your marketing idea with the idea with the cat video. That was your idea, but you agree. Those little guys are hilarious. Perhaps the most frequently used influence tactic is rational persuasion, which means using facts, data, and logical arguments to persuade others that a proposed idea or request is the best way to complete a task or accomplish a desired goal. It can be effective whether the influence attempt is directly upward towards superiors, downward towards subordinates, or horizontally because most people have faith in facts and analysis. Rational persuasion is most effective when a leader has technical knowledge and expertise related to the issue. For example, expert power. Although referent power is also used frequently, some parts of rational arguments cannot be backed up with facts and figures, so people have to believe in the leader's credibility to accept his or her argument. Secondly, we have make people like you. We all know it's easier to say yes to someone we like than to someone we don't like. One author of a book on influence tells a story about an American worker in Saudi Arabia who learned that getting information or action from government offices was easy when he stopped by to drink tea or even chat for a while. The cultural values in Saudi Arabia put great emphasis on personal relationships, but people in all cultures respond to friendliness and consideration. When a leader shows concern for others or demonstrates trust and respect and treats people fairly, people are more likely to want to help and support the leader by doing what he or she asks. In addition, most people will like the leader who makes them feel good about themselves. Leaders never underestimate the importance of praise. Next, we have rely on the rule of reciprocity. If we can recall the discussion of dependency and how leaders gain power by having something that others value. A primary way to learn that power is equal to influence is to share what you have, whether it be time, resources, services, or emotional support. There is a near universal feeling amongst everyone that others should be paid back for what they do in one form or another. This unwritten rule of reciprocity means that in one way or another, leaders who do favors for others can expect others to do favors for them in return. Leaders also elicit the cooperative and sharing behavior they want from others by first demonstrating it with their own actions. Next, we have develop allies. Reciprocity also plays an important part in the role of developing networks of allies, people who can help the leader accomplish his or her goals. Leaders can influence others by taking the time to talk with followers and other leaders outside of formal meetings to understand their needs and concerns, as well as to explain problems and describe the leader's point of view. Leaders consult with one another and reach a meeting of minds about a proposed decision, change, or even strategy. A recent study found that political skill, particularly network building, has a positive impact on both followers' perceptions of a leader and performance as well on the actual objective performance of the work unit. A leader can expand his or her network of allies by reaching out to establish contact with additional people. Some leaders expand their networks through hiring, transfer, and the promotion process. Identifying and placing key position people who are sympathetic to the desired outcomes of the leader can help achieve the leader's goals. However, if power building is perceived as self-serving, key people may become alienated within the organization. And number 5, ask for what you want. Another way to have influence is to make a direct appeal by being clear about what you want and asking for it. If leaders do not ask, they seldom receive. Political activity is effective only when the leader's vision, goals, and desired changes are made explicit so that the organization can respond. Leaders can use their courage to be assertive, saying that they believed to persuade others. An explicit proposal may be accepted simply because people have no other alternatives. Also, a proposal for change or a specific decision alternative will also receive favorable treatment when other options are less well defined. Effective political behavior requires sufficient forcefulness and risk taking to at least try to achieve desired outcomes. And we have to remember the principle of scarcity. This principle means that people usually want more of what they can't have. When things are less available, they become more desirable. An interesting dissertation study on the purchase of decisions of wholesale beef buyers. For example, this is an example. There was a study done on wholesale beef buyers. They found that buyers were more than double their orders when they were told because of weather conditions there was likely to be a scarcity of foreign beef in the near future. Interestingly though, their orders increased by 600% when they were informed that no one else had that information yet. Retailers often use this principle by sending advance notice of sales to credit card holders, making them feel they are getting information that the general shopping public doesn't have. Leaders can learn to frame their requests or offers in such a way as to highlight the unique benefits and exclusive information being provided. One approach is to selectively release information that is not broadly available that supports the leader's ideas and proposals, letting people know that they are getting a sneak peek at information which captures their interest and makes them more likely to support the leader's position. And lastly, we have formal authority with expertise and credibility. The final principle for asserting influence is the leader's legitimate authority in the organization. Legitimate authorities are in a position to be particularly influential. However, research has found that the key to successful use of formal authority is to be knowledgeable, credible, and trustworthy. Managers who become known for their expertise, who are honest and straightforward with others, and who inspire, trust, and exert greater influence than those who simply just try to issue orders. In addition, effective leaders keep the six previous principles in mind, realizing that influence depends primarily on personal rather than position power. By understanding the importance of rational persuasion, liking and friendship, reciprocity, networks of alliances, direct appeal, and scarcity, leaders can extend the power of their former position and strengthen their influence over others. Next, we have considerations in using power and politics. So, does anybody know who this gentleman on the screen is? You could just put yes or no in chat, or anybody want to take a guess?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. Well, this part of the presentation will help us understand the ethical responsibilities of wielding power and influence in organizational settings and to differentiate ethical and unethical uses of power. This man's name is Harry S. Truman, and he was the 33rd President of the United States. He once said that leadership is the ability to get people to do what they want, do what they don't want to, and like it. Does anybody agree with this statement?
Yes.
Yes? Well, okay.
Repeat the
That's another.
statement, please. You can repeat the statement.
The statement is leadership is the ability to get people to do what they don't want to do and like it.
I 50-50 in that statement.
Okay, well,
That
leadership,
sounds like manipulation to me.
sorry,
Yeah, like manipulation.
manipulation.
Yeah,
Leadership
it
is,
it it's like it sounds like I mean, leadership is manipulation, but for me, it's like to make somebody do something that they don't like, but because you tell them to do it is, I don't know, it's almost sounding kind of sick.
interesting take. Leadership is an opportunity to use power and influence to accomplish important organizational goals, but uh, but power can also be abused, as you were just saying there. Like it sounds kind of iffy. Power can also be abused. So let's look at an example and consider the behavior of the colleague. Scott Rosen is an assistant manager at a financial services company. Rosen says that his colleague would routinely go to their boss's office and lead him to believe that Rosen was mishandling his job. The rival also undermining Rosen with his staff. Whatever I did, Rosen says, I lost. Eventually, Rosen was demoted and his colleague received a promotion. What do you think of his colleague's behavior? Was it done with the organization's best interest in mind, or was it done for personal gain?
Personal gain.
Right. Like Rosen's associate, there are frequently people in organizations who use power and politics to primarily serve their own interests at the expense of others in the organization. So I'll just give a little excerpt on what is power. This is the capacity or ability to direct or influence the behavior of others or the course of events. And we'll go on to personalized versus socialized leaders. Personalized leaders are typically selfish, impulsive, and exercise power for their own self-centered needs and interests, like Rosen's associate, rather than for the good of the organization. Socialized leaders exercise power in the service of higher goals that will benefit others and the organization as a whole. It is important that we understand the importance of the significance of ethical considerations in the use of power. One specific area in which the unethical use of power is of increasing concern for organizations is sexual harassment. People in organizations depend on one another, especially on leaders, for many resources, including information, cooperation, and even their jobs. When access to resources seem to depend on granting sexual favors or putting up with sexually intimidating or threatening comments, the person in a dependent position is being personally violated, whether or not the leader actually withholds resources, partly in response to procedures from the courts. Many organizations are developing policies and procedures that protect individuals from sexual harassment on the job and offer mechanisms for reporting complaints. Sexual harassment is not just unethical, it's illegal, and it's clear abuse of power. And here we have some guidelines for ethical action that will lead us to making the most ethical choice. Is the action consistent with the organization's goals rather than being motivated purely by self interest? Does the action respect the rights of individuals and groups affected by it? Does the action meet the standards of fairness and equity? Would you wish others to behave in the same way if the action affected you? And here I'll have another scenario. Because, however, there are many other situations in organizations that are not so clear cut, and leaders may sometimes have difficulty differentiating ethical from unethical uses of power and politics. So, you are a team leader in a marketing firm. We have two talented team members competing for a promotion. One of them, let's call her Sarah, has been consistently performing exceptionally well. However, the other team member, John, has been with the company for a longer duration and is well liked by upper management. You have the power to recommend one of them for the promotion. Does anybody want to give this decision a little try or go at it? Okay, Melinda, go ahead.
I recommend Sarah.
Sarah?
Because she seemed to be, she seemed to be, let's say, a asset to the organization at that point. She's actually doing what she's supposed to do, right? And adding to the organization.
Yes, I agree, because just because John has been with the company for a longer duration doesn't mean that he is still contributing in a way to the organization that is beneficial to them and helping them grow. So here we can see, is the decision based on the organization's goals or personal biases, which it wasn't. We just said it was for the organizational goals. Does the decision respect the rights of both individuals? Personally, everybody will say something different, but I think so. Is the decision fair for both employees? If we are choosing whichever employee for the right decision, then it should be fair in all situations. And would they want others to make a similar decision? Once both employees are treated with fairness and respect, they should be able to understand the situation that is happening and why both of them are in this position. So that was the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, the floor is open.